My reflection blinked, though I didn't. I was hunched over my desk at 2:17 a.m., editing a portrait that refused to be anything but mediocre. The apartment smelled like old coffee and photographic paper. Warm, chemical, the kind of scent that puts a shield over your thoughts. My studio was every landlord's nightmare. C-stands like skeletal trees, softboxes leaning in like curious neighbors, mirror panels lined along the wall to bounce light, and a graveyard of lenses with smudged caps. I like to say the chaos makes sense to me, but if you stepped in the door, you'd swear it was a crime scene where the victim was Taste. I lifted my eyes from the screen, because something tugged at me from the periphery. The full-length mirror I used for test lighting stood at an angle near the window, gathering sodium orange smog light from the street. I caught my own face there, unshaven, flat-mouthed, that slight sunkenness under my eyes. I'd been calling moody in bios and depression with good lighting in my head. Then the reflection blinked. Not a blink I'd missed. Not the slow, synced human kind. My lids stayed open, stung by the phosphor glow of the monitor. The me in the mirror fluttered his lashes once, like a little wave hello, and stilled. The mouse froze in my hand. A pixelated brush hung in the air above a cheekbone I'd been burning and dodging into oblivion. My first thought, caffeine hallucinations. My second, finally, something interesting. I did the rational thing and talked to myself. You're tired, Evan, I told the room. Because I am that brand of lonely where the narration leaks out loud. You've been staring at reflective surfaces for 6 hours. Your optic nerves are staging a coup. The reflection stared back. Same jaw. Same hair that looked like I'd fought a pillow and lost. Same mouth. A touch softer than mine, like the glass had buffed the edges. I waited. He did not blink again. I laughed under my breath and looked back at my monitor. A health bar in my brain ticked down. The deadline for the client was wedged in my calendar like gum under a desk. My best. Friend Liam had messaged something about, "Can't wait to see your concept Thursday," because he's the kind of person who uses exclamation marks like confetti. I should have been focused on skin tones and color profiles. Instead, the apartment felt full of someone holding breath. I saved the file, pushed back in my chair, and turned my whole body toward the mirror. "Okay," I said, which, yes, sounded like I was addressing a ghost. "Okay." The mirror accepted the news without comment. I tried the experiment every sleep-deprived artist eventually attempts. I raised my right hand. He raised his left. Perfect symmetry. I tilted my head. He tilted his. We performed the small ballet of recognition, the ritual that proves we're solid and not split. When you live with depression long enough, you get used to testing your solidity, touching corners, naming colors, counting backward, but you don't expect your own face to grade you. "Blink," I told him, "because if you're going to negotiate with equations, you might as well start with the variable that changed." I held my eyes open. The waterline burned. The mirror me didn't blink. Neither did I, until pain winched my lids down. When I opened, he was still there, unspectacular and mine. "See?" I said. Just exhaustion. Something in my chest unknotted, and the room went back to being a room. Battered hardwood, the whining fridge, the soft drip of the French press I'd forgotten to wash. I grabbed the mug, took a swallow of cold coffee, and grimaced so hard I made myself laugh. The laugh made me feel marginally less like a haunted house. I turned the mirror a few degrees, so the angle caught the plant by the window instead of my face. The plant looked healthier in the reflection. A cheerful lie. I set the mug down, cleaned a smudge off the 50mm with the tail of my t-shirt, and reminded myself that hallucinations don't pay rent. Rent, unlike hallucinations, demands exact amounts. The cursor crawled across my screen, chopping contrast into tiny, obedient squares. Music filled the silence, something instrumental, full of roomy reverb and slow beats, as if even the sound was exhausted. The city hummed like a big cat. I edited. I breathed. I forgot the mirror. A prickling started at the nape of my neck 20 minutes later, a gentle static that felt like a hand almost touching. I glanced left. The mirror had a sliver of me in it. My shoulder, the top of my ear, a slice of cheekbone. I should have dragged it further away. I didn't. Don't, I told myself. You're doing great. Ignore the shiny rectangle of potential psychosis. I looked anyway. I turned my head fully, slow enough to pretend it was accidental, fast enough to catch a movement if there was one. The reflection was patient. It waited with my face and my posture and my not blinking eyes. But the mouth, my mouth, softened. Not a smile. Not exactly. The corners lifted, then paused there, like a door cracked for air. I didn't move. I couldn't have moved if my life depended on getting up and running 3 blocks. The soft lift stayed, quiet, precise, private. It felt like a note slid under a door with the ink still wet. I see you. The breath I let out sounded embarrassingly loud. That's not how glass works, I told no one. The apartment agreed by remaining an apartment. My therapist, if she were on speakerphone right now, would have gone with, "What are you feeling, Evan?" The answer would have been ridiculous. Seen. Not the good kind. Not the Instagram caption kind. The kind that makes you aware of your skin like a too warm coat. I have spent years learning how to be fine in public and neutral in photographs. My body is trained for stillness. The almost smile undid me with the suggestion that stillness had been a pose. I should sleep, I said, and for once, the statement wasn't an apology. I stood. The chair wheels squeaked. My knees complained like arthritic pigeons. The mirror's angle caught more of me as I straightened, and I had the absorbing, insane notion that if I walked closer, something would change again. Don't do it, I thought, with the same tone I use for pastries and exes. Don't approach the thing that wants attention. I approached. Of course I did. I stopped an arm's length away, caught in my own eyes. Up close, I could see the faint scratches in the glass from some move. Long ago, the silvering at the edge where age had chewed through. My reflection had every detail. The faint scar on my chin from when Liam dared me to skateboard in college, the crease between my brows I'd earned from trying not to cry at family gatherings, the mole, eye clone stamp, out of self-portraits because I'm vain in all the manageable ways. "Hello," I said softly, because if I was going to be absurd, I might as well commit. The mouth in the mirror lifted again, clearer now, a small, genuine curve that didn't belong to the muscles in my cheeks. It wasn't a grin, just an acknowledgement, as if the person inside the glass had been waiting for me to say it. My skin pebbled. A rush of heat went through me, followed by cold. I had the absurd, vertiginous impulse to mirror it back, to let my lips answer, to signal across whatever this was. I didn't. I stood there, heart lurching along in a clumsy rhythm, and the word lonely turned into something else, not alone. The smile faded. My face returned to perfect mimicry. Every movement nodded to mine. The room seemed to exhale. Outside, a siren dragged a blue ribbon down the block. A neighbor coughed. The radiator hiccuped. I stepped back, bumping into a light stand, which clanked in protest. "Okay," I said again. But this time it sounded more like a truce. "Okay." I dragged the mirror so it faced the wall. It scraped the floor in a way my downstairs neighbor would hate me for tomorrow. Out of sight, out of mind. Except my mind is an inconvenient elephant. Back at the desk, I saved, exported, and queued the file for the client. In the subject line, I wrote final selects, and in the body, I wrote attached. Let me know if you want alternate crops. I stared at the cursor until it took pity on me and stopped blinking. I sent the email. When I finally turned off the desk lamp, the apartment fell into a layered darkness. The city light, the stubborn glow of the router, the pale rectangle of the covered mirror, darker than the wall, as if it retained night. I slid into bed and lay on my back, listening to the building creak, counting breaths like I was corralling them into a pen. On breath 9, my phone buzzed with a message from Liam. "You up? Need to show you something wild. Call me in the morning." I typed, "Morning. Good luck with the wild." I didn't add an exclamation point. On breath 12, I pictured the mouth in the mirror lifting just for me. On breath 15, I told myself, "Sleep. You're exhausted. Coffee and glass and grief for things you never name. It's nothing." Somewhere between breath 20 and whatever came after, I let myself imagine a voice that went with the smile. Low, dry, patient, A voice that could wait for me to look long enough. The last thing I thought before sleep clipped the thread was stupid and earnest. And mine, if I have to be haunted, please let it be by something that knows me. It was past midnight again. The hour when every sound in my building seemed exaggerated. Pipes moaned like they were in mourning. A neighbor's TV hummed 2 floors down. And my keyboard clicks felt indecently loud. I should have gone to bed. Or at least pretended to. Instead, I dragged the mirror back out. Science experiment, I muttered, planting myself cross-legged on the floor with a mug of reheated coffee. Control, exhausted photographer. Variable, glass rectangle of doom. I stared at my reflection. For a while it was boring in the way staring at yourself usually is. Every pore, every uneven patch of stubble, every reminder that I'm one haircut away from looking feral. My reflection matched me move for move. The rational part of me relaxed, triumphant. Then, just when I was about to give up, he hesitated. I raised my hand, deliberately slow. The reflection copied me. Half a second late. Too late. My skin prickled like static. Okay, I whispered, my throat dry. That's new. I leaned forward. My reflection leaned too. But the delay was clear now, a fraction of a beat behind me. The space between us thickened, heavy like humid air before a storm. And then I heard it. A voice, low, dry, threaded with something unnameable, slid across the room, though no lips moved. You came back. I froze. My first thought, Liam had installed some prank speaker in my walls. My second, maybe I'd finally gone full schizophrenic. And this was the opening act. The reflection lifted its chin, not in sync with mine. You're not surprised enough. You've been waiting. I blinked. That's impossible. Most truths are, until you look long enough. I shot to my feet, nerves firing in every direction. Nope. This is it. Too much caffeine, too little sleep. My brain's staging an improv show. The voice chuckled, soft, like glass clinking. If I'm only in your head, then why are you standing? I swallowed. My knees trembled. I sat back down, more out of spite than bravery. Fine. Let's play along. Ghost? Demon? Alter ego with a subscription plan? The reflection tilted his head, slower than me. Call me Miren. The name rippled in the air like a stone skipping across water. For a second, the edges of his figure blurred, and then sharpened. He wasn't quite me anymore. He was taller, shoulders straighter, skin pale with a sheen like polished silver. His hair shifted as if it were made of melted glass poured in motion, catching non-existent light. And his eyes, God, his eyes held golden sparks that pulsed like candle flames. I flinched back. Okay. Definitely not me on a good hair day. You were expecting your own face forever? The voice had humor, threaded with something sad. That would be dull for both of us. I let out a short laugh, nerves leaking through. Great. My inner critic finally has a body. And, of course, cheekbones better than mine. Miren's mouth curved, though the sadness didn't leave his gaze. You try to laugh, but your eyes stay tired. You smile with your mouth, not with your soul. The words hit harder than they should have. My chest tightened, defensive. That's a neat party trick, reading emotions off faces. I didn't invite a therapist. I don't need to read, he said quietly. I see. Mirrors don't lie, Evan. Hearing my name from his lips, if they even counted as lips, sent a jolt through me. I hated how it warmed something in me I'd been trying to keep cold. I pressed my palms to my thighs, grounding myself in fabric and bone. So what now? You lecture me every time I check if I have toothpaste on my face? You came back to look, Miren said simply. That's enough. The room felt smaller, like the walls had inched inward. My nerves screamed at me to pull the sheet back over the mirror and forget this ever happened. But instead, I stayed. I couldn't stop staring at those impossible eyes. Bright, fractured, but watchful. And I hated how much I wanted to ask him to keep talking. The cafe was too bright for the hour and too cheerful for my mood. Exposed brick walls, succulents hanging in mismatched pots, and a playlist. That made everything sound like a ukulele cover of my impending doom. Liam sat across from me with his trademark grin, the one that always managed to look both innocent and smug. "Pretty good turnout, huh?" he said, sliding his phone across the table. On the screen was a gallery announcement, his name printed bold, under a photo that was very much mine. My shot, my light, my angles, my fingerprints. I stared so long my coffee went cold. "That's my project." He leaned back like I'd complimented him. "Well, yeah. But I tweaked it. Added some edits, pitched it differently. You weren't moving on it, and honestly, Evan, you've been so in your head lately. I thought, why not? The world needed to see it." My stomach dropped like a bad elevator. "So you just took it?" Liam sipped his latte, foam clinging to his lip. "Don't be dramatic. You always get stuck in perfection mode. I actually made something happen. You should be thanking me." I wanted to throw the mug at the wall just to hear something shatter. Instead, I gripped the cup until it squeaked. "You stole my work." "It's not stealing if we're friends," he said, tone so casual it scraped against my ribs. "Come on, Ev, don't sulk. It'll boost both of us. Your name will get mentioned. And hey, my agent loved it. She's going to help me pitch it wider." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "Of course she did." He frowned. "You're spiraling again. This is why I didn't tell you earlier. You take everything so personally." Because it was personal. It was my eye, my hours behind the lens, my nights editing until my chest hurt. And now it was his shiny success story. I left him with his latte and his grin, the ukulele soundtrack chirping like mockery as I walked out. At the agency, the air smelled like expensive candles and ambition. My agent, Claire, paced in front of a mood board, plastered with faces I didn't know and deadlines I hadn't agreed to. She was all sharp angles in a tailored blazer, hair pulled so tight it might have had its own contract. "So," she clapped her hands once, a sound like punctuation. "We've got a situation." I dropped into the chair across from her desk, my body already braced. "I noticed." Claire tapped a folder. "Liam's stunt. Yes, it's messy. But messy can sell. We spin this right and suddenly you're the tragic, overlooked genius. The guy who talks to mirrors, sees things no one else can. People love tortured artists." I blinked. "You want to use my supposed hallucinations for press?" She raised a brow. "You handed me gold, Evan. A friend betrays you? You talk to reflections? Tell me that's not marketable?" Heat flooded my face. "It's my life. Not a campaign." Claire leaned forward, her smile as sharp as glass. "Everything is a campaign if you do it right." I stood, the chair legs screeching. "Then maybe I don't want to do it right." Her eyes narrowed, calculating. "Suit yourself. But don't come crying when no one remembers your name." I walked out before my pride caved in. That night, the apartment was thick with silence. I didn't bother with the lamp, just dropped onto the floor across from the mirror like it was an old confessional. My reflection wasn't in sync again. His gaze lingered, steady. "They took it," I said, voice breaking in the middle. "Liam, Claire, my work, me. And the worst part? They'll get away with it. I'll just be the crazy guy talking to himself." The reflection tilted his head. Then Miren's voice came, low and even. "You're not crazy. You're seen." I laughed bitterly. "Not the way I want to be." His eyes glowed faintly, gold threads weaving through the dark. "They can take prints, exhibits, applause, but not what made them. Your photographs aren't images. They're what you see. That can't be stolen." The words slid under my skin, unsettling and soothing at once. My throat tightened. "It doesn't matter if no one else knows. It matters that you do," he said. "Truth isn't in galleries. It's in sight." For a long moment I just sat there, breathing shallow, my palms pressed to the cool floorboards. Outside, the city roared and swallowed itself. Inside, it was just me and a demon in glass, telling me I wasn't invisible. And for the first time that day, I almost believed it. I started losing track of how many nights I spent on the floor in front of the mirror. The carpet under me had a permanent dent, and my coffee mugs gathered around like ceramic sentinels. I used to avoid my reflection, I'd angle lights away from it, crop photos tight, dodge mirrors in public restrooms. Now I was sitting willingly, waiting for glass to breathe back at me. You realize, this is insane, right? I said one night, balancing a mug on my knee. A 26-year-old man spending quality time with his own reflection. My therapist would have a field day. The corners of Miren's mouth curved. You're self-aware. That's half of sanity. I snorted. So, yes, I'm crazy. But at least I'm crazy with a demon friend, which is surprisingly comforting. Friend, he echoed, and the word lingered like he was tasting it. You don't like that label? He tilted his head. I like that you gave me one. For a second, I didn't know what to do with that. I tapped my mug against the floor, buying time. Fine, demon friend, mirror buddy, my unpaid life coach. Take your pick. The golden threads in his eyes flickered. Not coach. I broke too many rules to be anyone's guide. That snagged my attention. Rules? Miren leaned closer, and though I knew the glass was there, I felt the weight of him, like heat bleeding through. Once I was free. We, my kind, we are meant to pass between places, between faces. Reflections are doorways, not prisons. But I lingered. I stayed where I shouldn't, with someone I shouldn't. That was my rule broken. His voice was softer now, tinged with something ancient. They sealed me here, in mirrors, in glass. A punishment and a warning. The words sat heavy between us. I wanted to ask what someone meant, but his expression was already half a wall, half a wound. So you're stuck, I said instead. Yes, unless someone keeps looking long enough to hold the door open. My chest tightened. And that's me. That's you. The mug suddenly felt stupid in my hand. I set it aside, rubbing the heel of my palm against my thigh. Guess we're both trapped then. You in glass. Me in my head. He studied me with those impossible eyes. At least, you can leave your prison when you want. I almost said you don't know what it's like, but stopped. Because maybe he did. The room settled into quiet, the good kind. My phone buzzed somewhere under a pile of papers, ignored. The city's noise filtered in through the window, sirens, a drunken laugh, tires hissing on wet pavement. I cleared my throat. You know, when I was a kid, I couldn't sleep if there was a mirror in the room. I'd make my dad cover the one in the hallway with a blanket. Swore something was looking back at me. Miren's brow lifted. You were right. I gave a small laugh. Yeah, well, I didn't imagine you. I thought it was some creepy monster with too many teeth. And now? Now, I looked at him straight on, at the glow in his eyes, the way his presence filled the dark. Now I only feel like myself here. In front of you, something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe, or something harder to name. Evan, he said slowly. Be careful what you give to glass. It remembers. Yeah, well, my throat felt tight, so I pushed a smile through it. You're the only one listening, so you're stuck with it. We fell quiet again. But it wasn't empty. The silence stretched, almost fragile. My hand shifted against my will, moving toward the glass. I stopped an inch away, heart hammering. You shouldn't, he murmured. Probably not, I whispered back. But I pressed my fingertips to the mirror. The surface was cool, firm. And then, against all logic, warmth pressed back. His hand, mirroring mine, but not exactly. The faintest pressure, answering me. The jolt ran through me like current. My breath caught. Miren's eyes met mine, steady, golden. His voice was low, almost reverent, closer than reflection. My chest ached with something I couldn't name. I wanted to pull back, to joke, to erase it. Instead, I left my hand there, caught between glass and not glass. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone in my own skin. The first time I noticed the mirror flicker, I thought it was the bad wiring in my apartment. The second time, I realized it wasn't electricity, it was him. Or rather, something not him. The living room mirror wavered like heat over asphalt. My reflection stretched, its smile a fraction too wide. its eyes a little too dark. I jerked back, heart pounding. Miren? His shape steadied, but his jaw was set hard. You shouldn't have seen that yet. What the hell was that? He hesitated, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked uneasy. There is another. His name is Rion. Another demon. My laugh was hollow. Of course there is. Why stop at one? Collect the whole set. This isn't a joke. Miren's voice cut sharper than glass. Rion hunts reflections. He wants my place. The mirror's surface trembled again, and for a breath, my reflection warped into something monstrous. Teeth too long, eyes black as ink, hands clawing toward me. I staggered back, spine hitting the desk. My skin crawled. You're telling me that thing wants to move in? Miren's gaze burned gold, steady even as the glass behind him shook. If he enters, you'll see only what he chooses. Every fear you bury, every shame you've hidden, it will be all you have left. The distorted image lunged, and I swear I felt its breath on my face though the glass stayed intact. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. I can't. I swallowed, forcing words out past the terror. I can't live like that. Then don't let him in. Miren's tone softened. Urgent now. Look at me, Evan. Not the shadows. Me. I dragged my eyes to his. The golden sparks anchored me, held me like rope when I felt myself sliding. For a long moment, the two versions, the nightmare and Miren, pulled at me. One promised the kind of horror I'd always suspected was waiting inside me. The other promised, not safety exactly, but truth. And I realized I trusted him. A demon in glass, sentenced for breaking rules, and yet, I trusted him more than I trusted my best friend or my agent. I steadied my breath, fists clenching. Then I choose you. The warped reflection hissed, vanishing into a smear of shadow across the glass. The mirror stilled, only Miren left inside, watching me with something unreadable. You shouldn't have to, he murmured, like it was half apology. Yeah, well, my voice shook, but I held his gaze. I'm not letting some nightmare knock you out just because he wants your seat. You're stuck with me. A silence stretched, charged, then his mouth curved. The faintest echo of warmth. Closer than reflection, he said again. And I understood it wasn't just a phrase. It was a vow. For the first time in days, I didn't feel like prey to my own fears. For the first time, I chose to fight for someone other than myself. And it terrified me less than I expected. Claire called it a media opportunity, which is agent speak for the trains on fire, smile for the camera. Her office had rearranged itself into confidence, high-gloss table, a spray of white orchids, a ring light already set up like a tiny artificial sun. She'd invited a lifestyle blogger and a photographer I didn't know. Liam lounged against the window like a well-dressed plant, scrolling through, his phone as if he hadn't just turned my work into his career elevator. Evan, Claire sang, ushering me in. So brave of you to share your journey. My what? I said. She clicked her tongue. Your creative mental health journey, the reflections, the, voices. She lowered her voice as if the voices might unionize. It's raw. It's now. It's honest. I didn't agree to any of this, I said, looking at the ring light like it might burn me clean. Liam pocketed his phone and gave me a soft, wounded look he must have learned from TV. We're just trying to help, man. Tell your truth. My truth is, you stole my project, I said, and the blogger's eyes lit up like she'd been handed a better headline. Claire's smile didn't move but somehow sharpened. Evan, audiences love an underdog who speaks to his demons. Literally, she said. This is a rise arc. This is how you come back stronger. You mean how you monetize it, I said. She shrugged, elegant as a guillotine. Tomato, tomato. The photographer adjusted the light and asked me to sit, to look reflective. I almost laughed at the pun. I didn't sit. My body was a wire pulled too tight. My chest felt wrapped in something that didn't belong to me. Liam stepped closer, lowering his voice like we were teammates again. You're spiraling, Ev. This is what you do. You choke at the finish line and then blame whoever crosses it. Crosses it with my legs, I said. He flinched, then recovered. You're jealous. I stared at him. I wanted to tell him jealousy didn't feel like this. That jealousy had teeth, and this had a throat. I'm tired, I said instead. I'm tired of you calling betrayal ambition, and asking me to clap. Guys, Claire said brightly to the blogger, this is the friction that makes great art. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I wanted to. I didn't want to give them the soundbite. On the street, the air tasted like rain and exhaust. I stood there until my breath remembered how to be a human thing. Then I went home. The apartment greeted me with its usual chorus. The fridge hum, the radiator's small, wet cough, the city pressing its ear to my window. The mirror stood where I'd left it, catching a long blade of afternoon light. I hated it, and wanted it, and walked straight to it like it had a gravity field. My reflection looked like it hadn't slept in days, which was accurate. The skin under my eyes had that bruised watercolor thing I used to retouch out of portraits for money. I thought of the ring light and Claire's orchids, and Liam's soft voice filed under concern, and something in me caved. I can't do this, I whispered. The glass didn't answer. The apartment expanded into the moment where you decide to hurt yourself or the world. I reached for the light stand. It was heavy, comforting, practical. I can't do this, I said again, louder, to the empty room, to the ghost in the glass, to the shame stapled behind my breastbone. I can't be your circus. I can't be his shadow. I can't. The stand lifted easily in my hands. For a second I saw the arc, the swing, the shatter, the collapse of 100 glittering knives. Relief, I thought. Quiet. I imagined sweeping up the shards, learning to live without a rectangle that knew my name. Evan. His voice came like a hand catching mine mid-swing. Low, steady, threaded with something that hurt to hear. I froze. The stand hovered above my shoulder. My reflection blurred, then the blur steadied into Miren, the gold in his eyes lit like embers. Don't, he said. I can't keep being this, I said, though I didn't know what this meant. Haunted, hungry, held together by a conversation no one else could see. His gaze didn't flicker. You're the only one who sees me. Don't destroy what keeps me real. The words hit bone. I felt them in my teeth, in my wrists, in the soft places I keep closed even to myself. Rage cracked. Grief poured through the break. So I'm responsible for you now? I said, and it came out jagged. They're out there turning me into a headline, and I'm in here babysitting a demon because I can't make a boundary with glass. His mouth tipped, small and rueful. You are not responsible for me. You are the door. You can close it, but if you do, I go dark. And you... He swallowed, the motion strange and human on a face made of reflections. You will be left with their versions of you, not yours. Something ugly rose. Maybe their version wins anyway. Maybe I let it. Maybe I smash you and sleep for once. The stand felt heavier. My shoulder burned. I wanted the clean finality of impact. Evan, Miren said, softer. Look at me. I did. I always did. The gold steadied me like a horizon. I tried to breathe around the part of me that wanted to disappear completely, for convenience, for quiet. Say it, I whispered, not even sure what I was asking for. That I need you? He said, and the honesty in it undid me. I do. And you need the part of yourself that looks back without lying. The stand slipped an inch in my grip. I hated how much I wanted to believe him. I hated how much of me already did. Anger found one last flare. I am so tired of being the one who looks, who forgives, who understands. My voice climbed, cracked. I sucked in air, something primal bucking inside my ribs. Tired. The sound that tore out of me wasn't a word. It was a ragged animal thing, and the room absorbed it and shuddered. The light stand wavered. My vision rimmed white. Please, Miren said. Not grand, not dramatic, just human. Stay. The word split me. The stand crashed down, but not into glass. It slammed to the floor beside my foot, a metallic thunder that rattled picture frames and sent a stack of prints sliding. I was shaking so hard my teeth clicked. I pressed the heels of my hands to my eyes until stars popped. I hate you, I said to the mirror and the world and myself. I hate. My throat closed. Then hate me here, he said, where you can be seen. I lowered my hands. And then the impossible happened. The mirror bulged, just a breath, like a pond struck by a stone. Hairline fractures spidered out from a point at shoulder height, not breaking but bending light. A shape pushed through the surface, as if the glass were a skin learning how to give. A hand emerged. Not mine. His. It was pale as frost, traced with delicate seams of gold like molten light, had healed 100 cracks. It hovered in the air, dripping no glass, casting a shadow that shouldn't exist. My breath left me. I reached without thinking, palm up, like you would for a bird you didn't want to startle. His fingers, cool and impossibly real, touched mine. The shock was electricity and relief. The contact went straight to the part of me that had been clenched for years and loosened it a fraction. Closer than reflection, he murmured, voice shaking for the first time since I'd known him. Tears spilled, angry, grateful, everything at once. I let them. I let his hand anchor me to the floor, to the room, to the choice I had made without, meaning to. I would not shatter the only thing in my life that told the truth back. Outside, a siren passed. Somewhere above, a neighbor laughed. In the mirror, hair-thin cracks glowed and then dimmed, the surface smoothing, slowly around his wrist, like water learning to be glass again. I closed my fingers around his. I'm here, I said, hoarse. I'm not leaving. Nor I, he answered. And for a heartbeat, I believe that was enough to hold back everything that wanted to swallow us both. Night made the apartment a shallow lake. The city's light slid over the floor in long, liquid bands. The router blinked like a patient heartbeat. Every reflective surface I owned, carelessly amassed for lighting tests and creative options, watched me. Frames, a black TV screen, a glossy stovetop, the window when the wind smoothed its skin, doors Miren had called them, not prisons. I'd meant to put blankets over them. I'd meant to move the spares into the hall. Instead, I sat cross-legged on the floor in front of the big mirror, like a pilgrim with terrible posture, and held the cool, impossible weight of Miren's hand where it reached through the surface. We were so quiet, I could hear the tiny clicks of the radiator contracting. My pulse pricked at my wrists. Rien won't stop, Miren said. His voice sounded strained, like a violin string tuned a fraction too tight. He's old hunger. He feeds on the worst you believe about yourself. Cute, I said, because humor is the thread I grip when the floor tilts. Tell him to get in line. Miren huffed a small laugh. It flashed in his eyes and died. Stay with me when it starts. When? I repeated, as if the night were a schedule, as if fear please replied. The first hit came like a fish against glass. Soft, shocking. The big mirror shivered under my palm. Across the room, the TV screen breathed once, fog blossoming against the black. The slender gilt mirror by the entryway tilted of its own accord, catching light where there wasn't any, and then the reflections changed. In the window, a pale version of me stood on the sill, hollow-eyed, mouth red with words I hadn't said aloud. In the black TV, my body slumped over my desk, skin grayed, open emails multiplying across the screen with subject lines that read, "We're passing, we're sorry. We have decided to move forward with someone else." In the metal kettle, my hands shook as I scrolled through Liam's feed. His triumphs in my angles, 10,000 little hearts beating for the theft. The big mirror did worst. It stretched me. My shoulders pinched, my spine curved, my face pulled long and sallow like a funhouse sneer. My eyes went ink black until I couldn't find my pupils. When I lifted a hand, the reflection showed long, thin fingers like cracked glass. "Look at me," Miren said. "Quick, quiet. Evan. Look here." I dragged my gaze back to him like it weighed 50 pounds. His golden threads were steady, the seams along his hand, those molten hairline lines, glowed faintly under my fingers. "Rien," I said, and the name tasted sour. "Rien," Miren agreed, and for a heartbeat his expression wasn't the calm I knew it was. Anger, old and precise, aimed not at me, but at the thing moving behind the silver. He'll try to make you small. He'll try to make you forget you chose. The kettle's surface shuddered. In it, my mouth opened around ugly laughter. The Windows version pressed its forehead to the glass, leaving a smear like a bruise. I could smell metal and dust, and the faint sweet of the orchid Claire had given me 3 birthdays ago, now dying quietly on the shelf. Why me? I asked, voice thin. He could haunt anyone with a mirror and a mood disorder. Miren's mouth ticked. You keep the door open. You look long enough to hold me. That makes you a house both of us can enter. He glanced past me, and the gold in his irises sharpened. He's impatient tonight. The long gilt mirror snapped upright with a sound like a coin flipping. My reflection inside it turned, too fast, and grinned with too many teeth. Fear isn't smart, but it's fast. I wanted to run. Into the bathroom, under a blanket, into a version of my life without glass. Instead, I rooted myself like a tripod. My therapist would have been proud. Or alarmed. I'm done, I told the room, the TV, the window, the glinting parade of my worst angles. My voice came out steady. It surprised me enough to believe it. I'm done flinching from myself. The shadows in the surfaces twitched, like I'd spoken in a language they hadn't expected me to know. Miren's hand tightened around mine. Cool, deliberate, good, he said, and something in the word cupped the back of my neck, bracing. The big mirror rippled. For a second, it wasn't a sheet but a skin, and something pressed from the other side. A shape swam up, slick, wide, then fractured into 1,000 me's, each one, mouthing a different failure. The kettle screamed a high, thin sound only metal makes. The window fogged with letters, backwards from my side. Crazy. Thief nobody. A laugh rang out. It didn't come from a throat so much as from the silvering in every reflective edge. It skirted my ears, slithered between my ribs, tried to tickle my spine into bending. I tasted aluminum. Don't give him your gaze, Miren said. Choose where to look. I looked at him. I let every other surface blur, a dozen accusations knocked out of focus. I filled the frame with his face, the way studio photographers do when they know the portrait is in the eyes. Say something true, he murmured. I almost said I'm scared. It was true, but truer was the thing I'd been stepping around, careful as a cat across a sink full of knives. You're not my hallucination, I said. You're the only one who hasn't lied to me. The laugh faltered. The TV jolted. The window smeared its letters into nonsense. The big mirror dulled, as if frost crawled over it from the edges in. Inside the glass, something moved that wasn't Miren. I didn't see a figure so much as the suggestion of one. Depth in a place that shouldn't have had it, like the world had forgotten how thick the silver was. It came on fast. A shadow that had learned to swim. Miren let go of my hand. No, I said, sharp as a snapped string. Trust me, he said, and stepped backward into the dark that belonged to him. For a breath, I saw nothing, only my own face, pale and set. Then the mirror spasmed like a struck animal. The apartment's other reflections hissed. A choir of bad glass. I heard scuffling without sound. I saw flashes, Miren's gold, a slash of onyx, a spray of hairline cracks veining, out and sealing over, again and again, like lightning caught and stitched. I pressed both palms to the surface. Miren, I said. And then I didn't say his name because I didn't want to call the other thing by it, even by accident. I said mine instead, like a password. Evan. 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 The mirror stilled. My breath roughed the glass and haloed into mist. In the fog, a handprint bloomed from the other side, larger than mine, long, fingered, the seams brighter, molten. His face rose into view, not perfect, not untouched. His cheek carried a new crack, hair, thin, that ran to his jaw and disappeared in light. His eyes were bright as coins in deep water. I told him this house is occupied, he said, and his mouth quirked like it hurt. He doesn't like no. Get in line, I said again. And this time I smiled with all the parts of my face. The other mirrors rattled in one last chorus. The window went black and showed only the night outside. No letters, no pale boy on the sill. The kettle sighed, like it had been holding its breath. We were not safe. We were only not losing. My hands were still on the glass. His hands came up to meet them, fingers aligning not with mine but through mine, like cords. The barrier hummed where our skin should have been. Closer than reflection, he said, and it sounded like both a promise and a question. Closer, I said back. I leaned in. It wasn't romantic at first, it was desperate. A boy kissing the only honest thing he'd met in a year. My mouth hit cold. The jolt went through my teeth. The glass didn't give. Then it did. It softened under my lips with a small, tender sigh. Like water remembering it had been rain. Warmth slid forward. The taste of ozone and winter fruit, something clean and old, opened on my tongue. The world tilted. Every mirror in the apartment flashed at once, bright enough to paint my lids. The big one bulged, out this time, and the seams along its surface lit like constellations. The sound wasn't shattering. It was a long, low note, like a cello learning the word yes. And he stepped through. There was no rain of shards, no drama of destruction, only a body easing past the skin of a pond. One foot found the floor, then the other. The air bent around him as if to make space. My mouth pulled from his with a tiny shock, like breaking a thread. He was taller than me by a head. The silver wash of his skin was no longer a sheen but a fact, as if moonlight had decided it was tired of being a phase and wanted to be bone. Thin seams of gold ran along his arms and throat like kintsugi, visible where other people had veins. Up close, the lines weren't flaws. They were map work. His eyes were the same, brighter, alive in a way that made my own chest flip. We stood stupidly, breathing at each other, two animals deciding not to bolt. Hi, I said, because sometimes language only gives you small doors to walk through. Aye, he echoed, and then laughed, soft and startled, like a secret that had fallen out and wasn't dangerous anymore. He reached up as if to touch my cheek and hesitated. I tilted my face into the space where his hand would be. He completed the motion. Cool palm, careful pressure. The seams along his fingers glowed faint with contact. You're here, I said. It felt like saying grace. I'm here, he answered. And for the first time, the phrase wasn't a wish or a command. It was true. Behind him, the mirror smoothed, the last of the light fading into quiet. The other reflective surfaces went back to pulling in whatever the room offered. A boy, a demon, the curve of a mug, a plant trying. I couldn't stop looking at the gold tracing his skin. I gestured helplessly. Cracked, beautiful. Sorry, that came out wrong. It didn't, he said. His mouth tilted. The cracks are the price. And the reason I stay? Because they keep you. I trailed off. Bound, he said, to what I am, to where I've been, to here. He looked at me like the last word had a second meaning. I felt it in my ribs. I felt all of it, the fear, the relief, the stupid human joy of having a person you can point at and call mine without owning them. I stepped forward. He let me. Outside, the city kept happening. Inside, the mirrors were only mirrors again, for now. It occurred to me, a ridiculous, enormous thought, that I might sleep without bargaining tonight. I touched the seam along his wrist, gold warm as a coin in a pocket. So, I said, because humor is still the thread, even when it glitters. How do we explain this to the super if he walks in? We don't, he said solemnly. We make him look too long, and then we charge him rent. I laughed, shaky and real. Welcome home, Miren. Evan, he said, and my name in his mouth felt like a kiss I hadn't earned yet. Let me stay, as long as you want, I said, and the room, and the glass, and the part of me that had been a locked door all this time said it with me. Morning arrived like a soft apology. Pale light spread across the hardwood and pooled against the base of the mirror that, for once, was just a mirror. My first instinct, because old habits are tenacious, was to look away from it, to find a safer surface, a sink, a spoon, anything less honest. Instead, I looked straight on. I braced without meaning to. Nothing lunged. No letters wrote themselves backward. The person looking back was me. Puffy-eyed, hair catastrophic, mouth softer than I remembered. Not a monster, not a headline, just a man whose apartment now contained a demon making pancakes. "You're staring," Miren said from the kitchenette, voice warm with the steam. "Should I be jealous?" "Of me?" I said, smiling at the glass. "Absolutely not. But you can be jealous of your own pancakes. What did you do to them?" "Negotiated," he said solemnly. "With heat." He looked like a secret the morning had decided to keep, all silver-washed. Skin and thin seams of gold like sunlight caught in old cracks. In daylight, the gold didn't blaze, it hummed, a quiet thread through the room. He moved gently, as if the air might bruise, which would have read as affected on anyone else. On him, it was consideration. "Coffee?" he asked. "Please," I said, "and condolences to the plant I'm about to forget to water again." He poured. Our shoulders brushed. I felt the temperature difference, cool from him, warm from the mug, and thought, absurdly, home. We ate at the counter. He tried a bite, made a considering face, and tilted his plate so the light played across the syrup. "It's prettier than it tastes," he decided. "Story of my portfolio," I said. He glanced at me, I rolled my eyes. Old joke. Retired as of this morning. We did dishes like a ritual. He washed. I dried, our wrists ticking together. When I lifted my head, the mirror caught us both. For once I didn't flinch at the accident of seeing myself unposed. "You know," I said, toweling a plate, "this is the first time I've ever dated someone who spends more time in front of a mirror than I do." He studied his own reflection like he might argue. Then he smiled, slow as a sunrise. "I am doing research on what a face looks like when it's not afraid of itself." Heat bloomed behind my eyes. Not the bad kind, the kind that meant something green was growing in a place I'd salted. "Come help me set up," I said, "because if we stayed in the sweetness too long, I'd float away. We have a show to finish." The studio smelled like dust and light. I'd booked the space from a friend of a friend who owed me for a rush job. Paint flecks freckled the cement floor, and the windows turned the afternoon into butter. 20 mirrors leaned along one wall like patient guests. We'd collected them 4 weeks from thrift stores, stoops, strangers on the internet who wrote, "Take it. This one gives me bad dreams." I placed a chair in the center. "Ready?" Miren nodded. He didn't need a camera to make people hold still. His presence did it. When our first subject arrived, a woman from the building with a fierce mouth and a careful coat, she sat as if she'd been planning to her whole life. I explained the concept. Portraits with mirrors, not as props, but as partners. She looked at me like she expected tricks. Then she caught sight of Miren and forgot to be suspicious. "Look as long as you want," he told her, standing just out of the frame. His voice threaded the air. Not to find a flaw, to find a truth. She did. Something unclenched in her shoulders. In the glass, her mouth lost its performance and found itself, a single deep line between. Her brows softened without disappearing, like a river learning to be a lake. I pressed the shutter. The camera sang. Subject after subject, the room learned a new language. Laughter shook dust off the beams. A teenager with a chipped black manicure sat like the chair might bite. 10 minutes. Later they were leaning forward, eyes bright, as if the mirror had handed them a map. An older man asked if he should hide his scar, then touched it mid-shot with something like gratitude. Even when the grief came, which it did, in small drafts, the mirrors didn't spit it back as accusation. They held. Between sessions, I caught Miren studying a cracked oval we'd hung at eye level. "Rian?" I asked quietly. "Hungry," he said, "but not welcome." His gaze slid to me. The gold in it was steady. "Doors remember who opens them." I set a hand over the seam at his wrist, feeling where warm met cool. "So, do we?" He tipped his forehead to mine in the air between us. For a second, all the glass in the room reflected the same small, private distance. We titled the show Reflections because sometimes the obvious answer is the true one. The opening wasn't glamorous, a borrowed gallery with patchy white walls, a playlist that alternated between cello and songs my neighbors insisted were classics, a tray of cookies that looked better than they tasted. But people came. They stood before the frames and the mirrors we hung beside them, faces sliding through surprise into something softer. No one took selfies. They forgot to. Claire swept in an hour late with an orchid, as if she'd invented the species, examined the crowd, and calculated. "You could have told me you were recovering," she said under her breath, which was how she apologized. "We could have built backing." "I'm building this," I said, and it came out without heat. Different foundation. She glanced at Miren, took in what there was to take in. Beauty that didn't ask for permission, gold that didn't apologize, and pressed her lips together. "He photographs well," she said, which was how she approved. She left without lighting anything on fire. Liam hovered at the threshold like a boy caught knocking on the wrong door. He didn't cross. He looked at the portraits from there, a woman wearing her sorrow like a medal, a teenager with a new, fierce gentleness in their face, the older man with his scar, unapologetic and tender. He met my eyes. For once, he didn't grin. "Looks good," he said. It was the closest he'd come to sorry. "Thanks," I said, because forgiveness, if I ever gave it, would be a long road, not a word at a doorway. He nodded. He left. The room breathed. People wrote notes on the cards and slid them into a box we'd labeled "What You Saw." I read a few when the crowd thinned. "I saw my mother loving me," one said in loopy pen. "I saw I am not done," said another. A woman stood before the cracked oval and cried the quiet way, cleanly, like an answer had landed and chosen her. Miren stood far enough away to be polite and close enough to hold if she asked. She didn't. She steadied herself, smoothed her coat, and left lighter. "Do you feel it?" I asked him later, when the lights were low and the room had gone from public to ours. "What?" Their faces when they stopped lying to themselves. He looked around as if listening for a song I couldn't hear. "Yes," he said finally, "and I feel you not flinching." We stood in front of my favorite portrait, a frame where, if you looked long enough, you could see me. In the corner of a mirror, not posed, just there. Eyes tired, mouth soft, the smallest smile unguarded. I hadn't meant to include it. I had left it. Future me would be grateful. "Come home," I said, though we were already on our way. Back in the apartment, the night looked easy. I tucked the new plant a neighbor had given us beside the old one, and watered both. Miren turned the mirror so it caught the window. The city slid across it like a river learning a curve. We brushed teeth at the same sink, bumping shoulders. I remembered the boy who covered hallway, mirrors with blankets, and wanted to tell him the monster he feared would be a miracle. In the bedroom doorway, Miren paused, fingers tracing the seam at his wrist, gold pulsing under skin. "You're staying," I said, even though I knew. "I'm staying," he answered, and the mirror on the wall, and the glass in the picture frames, and the eyes in my face agreed. I switched off the lamp. Darkness gathered kindly. When I closed my eyes, nothing wrote itself across the inside of my lids. No letters, no teeth, just the echo of a room full of people seeing themselves and not turning away. Sleep came like a door I knew how to open. In the morning, because there would be a morning, I'd choose where to look. I'd make coffee. I'd water the plant. I'd lift the camera, let the light catch on 100 small truths, and press the shutter. And when I checked the mirror, it would check me back, not to judge, but to witness. "Good night," I said. Miren's hand found mine under the covers, cool and sure. "Good night, Evan." My name in his mouth felt like a promise kept.